Welcome to the Nomad Summit Podcast, episode 53. Today's guest has one of those stories that really stays with you. Elias Hezron grew up in a small village in Uganda where his parents were teachers.
So my childhood was, I don't know what average is, but it felt average.
The family farmed their own food, and processed food like KFC was something you saved up for a special occasion.
You would save money to go to KFC because that's what the cool people would be eating, right?
In fact, he didn't even visit the capital Kampala until he was 19 years old.
I was amazed at how many cars are there, how tall the buildings are. I did not even know where to go. And I recall the very first time I go to a mall, and then the mall had a fountain.
Fast forward a few years, and Elias is now building fintech and crypto products, working remotely in tech, living in Dubai, and helping shape the future of borderless finance in emerging markets. But this episode is much more than just crypto and technology.
There must be more, right? There has to be more.
Together with my co-host Alexandra, who's joining us from Network School in Forest City in Malaysia, along with Elias, we talk about ambition, opportunity, social mobility, and what happens when someone from a very ordinary background suddenly realizes that a completely different life might actually be possible. My name is Palabo, and this is the Nomad Summit Podcast. Welcome, guys.
Hello, Pale. Good to see you again.
Hello, Pale. First time seeing you. Amazing. I think I like this already. Yeah.
Hello. Welcome.
So how is Forest City and the whole thing that's happening right now for you two?
It's great for me. It's very good. Yeah, the people are very impressive. I keep sourcing new amazing podcast guests for us, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I love it here. I love the atmosphere. I love the people. I love the energy. I love the gym sessions. I love the food. We are eating super healthy. I feel like I have lost weight just eating good food, and yet I'm already very small. So yeah, this is it.
Yeah, the food is great and very healthy. A bit too healthy even sometimes. Maybe you have to remember to put your own salt and condiments into it, because it doesn't come with that automatically.
Yeah. Too much salt is not good for you. So, and our food is curated by Brian Johnson, and Brian Johnson is on the journey of never dying. So just living as long as you can live. Yeah. And I think I buy into it, because what's the point of dying young? Yet you could live to maybe 150. So yeah.
yeah. Never dying. Yeah, I like that.
Never dying.
Yeah, and the story today actually starts from the food place as well, because the first time that I talked to you, Elias, was at lunch, I think, the other day, a week ago or something. At least that's what I remember. And we were sitting there and talking, and at some point you said that you remember how when you were a child you went to Kampala, right? The capital of Uganda, first time, and you saw the roads and the cars, and you were very impressed. So you come from a much smaller place, and that's when my brain just exploded. That is a journey, going from a place where you don't have roads and cars at all to being an entrepreneur, to Dubai, to network school eventually. That's when I thought, okay, I must get this guy on our podcast.
Yeah. I actually first went to the city when I was 19 years old. So I was done with secondary school. I don't know how it is elsewhere. I think other places they call it college, but essentially I was done with secondary school. And then I went to Kampala, because that's where my university was. And it was the first time in the city, and I was amazed at how many cars are there, how tall the buildings are. I did not even know where to go. And I recall the very first time I go to a mall, and then the mall had a fountain. And I was like, how does this work? Where's the water coming from? They had put some fish. I was so impressed. I was mind blown.
Can you paint a picture of the town, the village you grew up in? How many people, and what did it look like, and what was your childhood like?
Okay, so my childhood was, I don't know what average is, but it felt average. My parents are teachers, and so we stayed in the living quarters that they give the teachers to stay at, right? So we had quite a community with, I played with the children of other teachers, and it was great. It was great. We farmed our own food. I don't recall, up to this point, I don't really recall us buying food because my parents would do agriculture to subsidize the cost, essentially.
So no processed food.
No processed food.
No.
Brian Johnson would approve.
Yeah, to be honest, I must have eaten processed food after I'm like maybe 19, like the very first time I went to the city. Before that, no processed food. Everything was very, and we would look forward, like even after I joined university, processed food like KFC. I think KFC might be the only international brand we have in Uganda. We do not have the others. But yeah, you would save money to go to KFC just so that you can eat processed food. But also, would want to eat KFC because that's what the cool people would be eating, right? The people who do not have money eat the ordinary food, like the non-processed, and then the people who have the money are the ones who are able to afford the processed food. And to be a cool person, you had to go and eat KFC or take your girlfriend out to KFC. So yeah.
Yeah. So in my hometown in Ukraine, actually, all the cool kids also used to go to McDonald's. So we didn't have KFC or other brands. We had only McDonald's. And when I was at high school, that's where the cool kids were hanging out at. And then a couple years later, they did open a KFC as well. And we also had a big celebration for that.
Yeah. I think partly it is the fact that most of the media we consume is American media, and there is this pull to want to be associated with what you see on television because it's portrayed as cool. So I do understand it now, and makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up in the small village, I'd like to get back there. Did you ever think, one day I'm going to build a tech company and live in Dubai?
No. When I was growing up in that small village, I was just living in the moment. To be honest, I wasn't even dreaming. I just need to be the best in my class. And then my parents wanted me to be a doctor. I had not yet decided. And then I go to secondary school, a fairly prominent school in Uganda, like for the middle upper class people of Uganda. Mm-hmm. My parents believed that it is very important that I go to such a place, despite them not being able to afford the school. I studied most of my secondary school when my parents were in debts. It was a struggle for them to really put me there. But while I was there, that is when I met rich kids. So before this point in my life, most of the people who I'm studying with are ordinary people. So you never feel the financial difference between you and the next person, right? Because you have the same income level, you are in the same income bracket. So you never feel the financial difference. But when I went to this school that had like students whose parents were really earning much, much more than the ordinary, and they would spend a lot of money, and they were just so rich and flamboyant. That is when the dream of wanting to be rich and like, I need to be rich. I need to work hard. I need to be at this point. I don't want to just be the ordinary person. That is when I started dreaming. Did I think I was going to do a tech company? No. Did I even think about tech at that point? No. I was like, no, I'll probably be a physicist or a doctor, and then I'll figure it out. I did not think about tech. And actually, university, I did economics, right? I did not do computer science or anything. So I did economics at university. I finished university, and that is when I got into tech, right after I finished university. The reason as to why I got into tech was I went to look for a job, and the offer I got from looking for a job was $100, an equivalent of $100, right?
Per month?
Per month.
Crazy.
Yeah. And at that point, I was sleeping on my friend's couch at his house, and he wanted me to contribute an equivalent of $40 for rent. So that the entire rent that we were paying, we were 3 people sleeping in one house. The entire rent was about $200, and he wanted me to contribute $40 because I wasn't making any money. But even that $40 was a struggle to contribute. However, I would not work for $100. I was broke and proud, right? So I refused to work for $100.
I really need the money, but not that little
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Broken proud.
Broken proud. I love that.
Yeah, I did not see myself going to work every day for $100. It just wasn't motivating. And I knew there was this burning thing about me that I was like, there must be more, right? There has to be more. So I did meet a friend. She was a lady. I was trying to hit on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she was so cool. I take her out to a bar in the evening, and I had an equivalent of $1.5. That was the entire money I had with me. But when I took her out, the understanding, right, was that everyone's going to handle their bill. And my expectation was I'm just going to take a soda, and she comes in and she's taking cocktails. Every cocktail is like $6. Between me and absolute poverty, I only had $1.5, right? So I was very impressed. By her ability and her spending power, because she took like 4 cocktails, each at $6, and I only had $1.5 in my life. At that point, I gave up the thought of wanting to woo her, wanting to seduce her. No, I gave it up, and now it was business. I asked her, how do you do it? What do you know? How do you have this money? How are you able to spend like this? And that's now when she tells me she's working remotely. At that point, she was making about 5,000 something, but between 5 and 6,000. And she tells me she's working remotely. She's making that money, and she's in tech. She's a software developer. And that is now when I was motivated by money. I cannot lie. I won't lie that I was motivated to solve a problem or anything. No, I was motivated by money. And that is when I decided to go to YouTube, learn how to do tech. And when I went to YouTube, I asked myself, what niche do I want to get to? Because she told me that if you just come and will do software development, you might not have a niche because you do not have the experience, and people want to hire people who have experience. So she suggested that I either go into AI or go into blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. And so I went to YouTube, searched AI development, searched blockchain development. I realized that blockchain was the hype because there were people talking about blockchain. And then I started to learn how to do blockchain development. And then in 3 months, I got a job. So I was learning, but I was applying for jobs. And then in 3 months, I was able to get a job. And that first job was paying me $1,280. Because it was $8 an hour.
So now you could finally pay your $40 rent.
I would pay my $40 tenfold, and I wouldn't feel it. I felt so rich at $8 an hour.
And you could take her out again for more expensive cocktails.
Yeah.
Yes, I could take her out for more expensive. But at that point now, I had given up the thought of like trying to seduce her and just trying to learn as much as I could
learn from her,
because I felt I could not match her spending power. So it was very pointless for me to seduce a person whose spending power I could not match,
But I'm curious, did you ever meet her again?
Yeah. We are friends actually up to now. She was also a self-taught developer, but she decided to like standardize it and get a computer science degree. She had studied law, and she decided to now get a computer science degree, and she went to, I think it's called Code Academy in German. But yeah, she went to German and she studied computer science. But yeah, I do meet her often.
Does she know what kind of impact she had on your life?
Yes, I make sure that she knows I do appreciate her for having this impact. The impact is just from seeing your peer being able to do these things, right? Because they seem out of reach until you see a person who is your peer achieving them. And then those barriers eventually are broken. Then it becomes possible. Because when you're in the village, I did not see people own cars. My dad is a teacher. I don't think he even dreamt about having a car, at least for most of his life, because it was just out of reach. And it wasn't something that I was aspiring to. But the moment you get into the city and you're seeing every other parent having a car, then you want to have a car, because then you want to fit in, right?
Yeah.
Then this whole mystique and this whole out of reach aspect of, that is out of reach, it's not there anymore, right?
Yeah, you see that it's possible. I think that's why network school is like, I feel like it's having a really good influence on me and very inspirational, because suddenly just around me in my proximity, I see people with everything that they have achieved on different levels. And I'm literally here and I can talk to them and I can have a chat with them and I can listen to their story. And suddenly it stops being just some stories on the internet about some people achieving success, but actually people that I am here seeing in person that like, oh, they could do it. So perhaps I can do that as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think inspiration and supporting other people does not necessarily have to be financial. Sometimes it is just showing them that it's possible by you actually doing it, you know? So this friend of mine never did support me financially, but being her friend and just
inspired you.
Exactly. She inspired me and she made me believe it's possible. And to be honest, I actually did not even have a computer, right? I did not have a computer. It had never occurred to me that there was a world in tech that maybe I would have pursued. So my sister had a computer that she was not using, and then I'm using her computer during the day, and if she wants to ever use it, I give it back to her. But yeah, I made sure I learn and I do it. While I did not have, I got my first job. I did my first job on a borrowed computer, right?
Yeah.
And the computer was essentially breaking down. You know, it was supposed to be a laptop and have a battery that keeps power, but it would never keep any power. You need to keep it plugged onto the socket for it to work. And after I got my first salary, then I was able to buy myself a computer.
Kudos to you for getting the breakthrough.
Yeah, but also there is an aspect of luck. Like, while I have a success story, I do not want to fully attribute it to my drive, because there are other people who have drive, right? There is an aspect of luck that we may not be in position to actually control. So, for example, I get into blockchain development, and I am lucky that the blockchain development is the thing that everyone's talking about, and there was a shortage of talent. So the moment I get in, I have the skill set required, I get the job. Another person who is not fortunate or who doesn't have access to this information decides to get into just software development, and they're following the traditional path, and it's much harder for you to break into software development of Web 2 because there is a saturation there, right? And it's much easier to get into blockchain development. I was not in control of that. I think it was a toss of the dice, and I found myself with a more sellable skill set than a person who did not. Yeah, and also when it comes to drive, it could be like you do your best and the opportunity is just not there. And the opportunity is not there because of your geolocation, right? So talent is distributed globally, but opportunities are not, right? So you are a doctor and then you are in Uganda, but there are just no jobs to put you in. So there is that aspect.
Yeah, and there's also the aspect of it's if you have a business idea, it's hard to go to the bank and get a loan. I remember a few years ago I visited a Agoli quarter outside of Kampala, which is a poorer area of Kampala, through an NGO called 22 Stars, started by Stella Romana, who I know from the Nomad Cruise. She helps local entrepreneurs, many of them women, to get small microloans to start their business, because like food stalls or salons or tiny shops, because they can't really go to the bank and say, I have this business idea. And what really struck me when I was there is how difficult it seems for ordinary people in Uganda to go into a normal bank and get a loan or even basic financial support. Was that your experience as well?
I always knew that the bank would not come to my aid. And also I did study economics, and the fact that I studied economics, I knew that the bank loan rate was 22%. Is crazy.
Crazy.
You see?
Highway robbery.
Yeah, you need a return of investment of about maybe 40 to 50% so that it makes sense. And you will have to be extremely lucky to get, an opportunity that's going to give you that return. So it was not something I was looking at. And also the fact that even if you were to get a loan, they would probably give you a loan up to 1,300. And at that rate, you would be in the rat race.
Just for reference, what is an average salary in Uganda?
It depends, honestly, but a lot of people are below $1,300. a lot of people who work in the government are earning less than $500. Wow. So the people who are maybe working at companies like KPMG, the audit firms, those are earning like $800 to $900. But if you put it after tax, it's probably $600, an equivalent of $600. So yeah, people not earning a lot. And when the banks is to give you, say, 1,300, which is 5 million Ugandan shillings, it seems a lot. Like it's 5 million.
You're a millionaire.
Exactly. You could live comfortably on 5 million ideally. But the moment you get to go and start a business, you have to pay rent, and you have to pay rent maybe 4 months up front, right?
And support a family.
Mm-hmm. And yes, exactly. You need to support a family because you have running costs. You also need to buy the merchandise that maybe you're trying to sell. So it just wouldn't cut it. It wouldn't cut it. Like, I think also that is one of the reasons as to why it's much, much harder to get out of poverty, and just dishing out money may not really cut it, because people need to survive. And then the cost of starting a business also is really high. So yeah, it's one of those conundrums that we have. Yeah.
We got more from Elias in a minute about how he landed in Dubai. But before that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the next Nomad Summit. It's happening in Estonia in July. If you've been curious about remote work or digital nomad life, but also a little skeptical of all the Instagram hype around it, then the next Nomad Summit in Tallinn, Estonia might actually be worth a look. Because this is a different type of nomad event. It's called the Nomad Summit Remote Work Edition, and it's much more focused on the practical side of building a sustainable remote career or business. So instead of influencers selling their dream lifestyle, they're bringing in people who actually hire remote workers, run remote companies, and deal with things like international taxes, compliance, freelancing, productivity, and all the stuff nobody talks about in those YouTube videos with laptops next to a swimming pool. And Tallinn, Estonia is actually a pretty interesting place for it, because they've been pioneers in digital infrastructure and remote-friendly systems for years. So if you're thinking about remote work seriously, this one might genuinely be useful. Go to nomadsummit.com to find out more. Let's get to the next part of your journey. How did you take the step to leave Uganda?
Oh, yeah. So I built a company, and that is before I left Uganda. I built a company while I was in Uganda. Our company was called OneDrump, and we were doing crypto payments, and we scaled it to 7 markets in Africa. The company was eventually acquired. I then worked with the company that acquired my company, which is called Virtual Finance. And what Virtual Finance does is it's a capital efficient DEX for local stablecoins. They're trying to build around local stablecoins. And then after that, one of the VCs that supported me at my company, which is called Stackware, who had an investment that was called Africa Ventures, and they had a 4 million fund to support projects that are building in Africa. Mm-hmm. They asked me to join them. And because I joined them, and I was earning a salary, I felt like I should get more value for my money. And that's the reason as to why I decided to relocate to Dubai.
When you sold the company, did you get a big bag of cash?
Yeah, it was okay.
Millions!
Oh no, just okay.
Because a big bag is very relative.
Depending on if it's shilling or dollars.
Exactly, depending on if it's shilling or dollars. But yeah, I decided to move to Dubai because it's a tax haven, and because you get value for money, and because my company was willing to support that. So that was the reason as to why I decided to relocate. I do love Dubai, actually. It's amazing. It's great.
Is it easy to get a permit to live in Dubai, or do you need to have a local employment, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, ideally you should have local employment, or you should invest in property and then you get a golden visa. Right? Dubai has multiple visas. There is a golden visa if you're investing in property or maybe doing a business. You could be employed. They have a freelance visa, right, as well. They have a content creators visa. Like if you just create content.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they have content creator visas as well for people who are content creators. Go set up an LLC there and then do your content creation from there. There are multiple ways to get into Dubai. Yeah.
What is yours? Which visa did you get?
So I got an employment visa. So my company employed me via their Dubai entity. Yeah.
So there you are, living in the Burj Khalifa, or in the shadow of the Burj Khalifa. What's life like in Dubai?
It's great. Life is amazing. I love Dubai. I wasn't living at the shadow of the Burj Khalifa. I was living in a place called JVC. So right beneath the Burj Khalifa, and that place is called Marina or Business Bay. Yeah, around those areas. Yeah, it's a land of opportunity. 200 nationalities around the world can easily get a visa there, and you can start from zero, pay 0% tax, multiply that money if you have the right ideas. Yeah, but of course also it is true that there is favoritism in Dubai. For example, like it's not something I experienced because I was employed, not because I stayed in Dubai. But I hear this from people who work there and from people of color and people who have African passports. Most jobs, for example, would employ based on your passport, right? So if you have a Ugandan passport or you have an Indian passport, you are going to be paid marginally lower than a person who has a European passport or the person who has a US passport. So it's something that actually happens in Dubai. So Indians, Africans are paid much lower for the same position as their European and American counterparts.
So it was just in December you said that you moved there, right?
Yeah, December, January, yes.
Nice. And now you're at network school and then you're going back to Dubai and you're actually spending most of your time there?
Yeah, so right now I'm in network school. I still have a bit of travel to do. I intend to go back maybe around September, October after the heat. Because right now it's super hot. It's like 37, 40 degrees.
But they have air condition everywhere, even outside some places.
Yeah, but a lot of the people who can afford essentially live in Dubai between October to April, May, and then they go to Europe. And then after the heat wave in Dubai passes and they come back. Yeah, it's very hot around this time. And given that I work remotely, I am able to come to Asia and enjoy this nice weather now and then go back to Dubai when the weather is much better.
Yeah, because you're not a digital nomad in the classical sense that we normally have on the podcast, but you are location independent. So could you see yourself traveling and working from more places? And the follow-up question, are you coming to Chiang Mai for the Nomad Summit in January?
Chiang Mai, Nomad Summit. I'll see, honestly, I'll look forward to it. I'm thinking there is a pop-up city called Mu Shanghai, which is in Shanghai. So that's where I'm going to next. And maybe after that, I'll go to Bali. And, if this is there in January, I cannot make any promises. I do not know what my year is going to look like in January, because that's like a long time away from now.
That's way
far away.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of people listening dream about building a location-independent business or changing their lives completely. What golden nugget of advice would you give to someone feeling stuck wherever they are right now?
I think globalization is a great thing and we should embrace it. And what I mean by this is that it allows you to be anywhere and to build a global product, right? Or target a global audience or get into the global world, essentially. What that means is that get into content creation. This is a global opportunity. If you're creating content and you have 1 million followers, a company in Europe, Asia, US would want to work with you because they want to sell to your followers, right? So that would give you location independence, because you're creating content and you're addressing a bigger problem. If you build a product, you can build a product all the way from Africa or from Asia. But if your product is a global product, it's also location independent, right? So because we are in a global world, you can be able to get into the global space. look for global opportunities. I don't want to be the type of person who would say that the opportunities are right there. No, they aren't. But if you're exceptional and if you market yourself well, I think one other thing that we need to talk about is how you market yourself well and how you brand yourself. Because no matter how good you are, and you do not create any content, you do not post on LinkedIn because you feel like that is cringe, or you fear to get in front of a camera and talk about your skill set, you will not get any opportunities. No one is going to find you from under the rock, right? You have to get out there.
You have to be findable.
Yes, you have to be findable and you have to post. You have to go to events. The very first time I left Africa to India for a conference, which was ETH India 2023. And that is where I met the Starknet people, right? And the people at Starknet and the Starknet ecosystem invested 85,000 in me, right? In my project. The reason as to why they invested this money, the reason as to why they were able to trust me with this money is because I had met them in person. I had interacted with them. I had sold myself in person than over the camera. Because when you talk to a person face to face, you build a bit of rapport, a bit of trust, because they can look into your eyes. They can see your enthusiasm. They can feel the energy, right?
Yeah, they know that you're a real person and not just an AI avatar on their screen.
Exactly. So the opportunity came. The reason as why I was able to get this money and to get this trust was because I got out of the comfort zone of being in Africa and went for this conference and talked to them and sold myself to them, and I was able to get that opportunity. Even the people who acquired my company, I attended a residency and I met them there. I spoke to them. I sold myself. But essentially, get moving. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, get moving, market yourself, put content out there. I did have a Medium. I wrote blog posts. I was active on LinkedIn. I'm not very active now, but I was active then. I post a lot on Twitter. And because you're posting on Twitter, you become the reference point. Yeah. How do you get into the global space? Market yourself. Right now, content creation is king, because just having talent and not being able to create content and to communicate that talent, you're never going to make it. In the crypto space, we have what's called WAGMI, and WAGMI means we all gonna make it. And if you're not marketing yourself, if you're not posting content, if you're not selling yourself, if you're not moving with your best foot, you're never going to make it. Yeah. It's called NAGMI.
Yeah. Elias, next time I come to Dubai, I'm going to look you up and see if you happen to be there. And then we're going to go to a place and I get a cheap soda and you get some expensive cocktails. And then you can inspire me to become rich and motivated to go out there late in life and finally get my big breakthrough.
Beautiful, beautiful.
The circle of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And I wish you all the best. And I hope to see you in Chiang Mai or somewhere else in the world at some point.
Yeah, definitely. We shall meet. The world is big. I'm always traveling. You're probably always traveling. Yeah, I would love to meet you sometime.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
This episode of the Nomad Summit Podcast was hosted by Alexandra Mosnitska and Palabo. The theme music was by Elias Hezron, aka DV the Audio Nomad.
สวัสดีค่ะ
And it was produced by me, Palabo, of radioguru.co.uk.